The island of Britain in 2026 is a very scary place. In the bowels of the Big Brother state apparatus, cogs churn for hours a day, turning treasonous power fantasies of panopticon surveillance and the criminalization of the wrong thoughts into a terrifying daily existence for its native populations, many of whom are unaware of the prison being built around them, and even worse, are conditioned to accept their imprisonment and extinction as good and necessary. It doesn't have to be this way. The weak and the evil that created the hard times for their own personal gains of power and wealth have, in these pursuits, brought out a fire in the hearts of men that hasn't been seen in generations. A fire that burns in the hearts of men like my guest today.
Liberate England!
Today on Voice of the Valleys, has Restore Britain got Reform UK absolutely well and truly rattled not even a few days after its birth? We will discuss why I think maybe that is the case and the differences between the two. Not only that, in the Senedd, Plaid Cymru members have been called out for blocking inquiries into grooming gangs in Wales, and Labour now, in true communist fashion, seem to be trading food for votes. All that and more today on Voice of the Valleys. Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Voice of the Valleys yet again. Your host and friendly neighbourhood far-right thug, always satirical unless it's not, Mr. George Cresswell, Lord/Laird, if you want to use my proper terms. Sitting here today in front of you all on what I hope will be a nice Tuesday evening after I get back from the gym and hopefully get this out as soon as possible. In my lefty plant attire, which I saw was one of the comments that were left on my video clip from last week, which I can't help but think has aged very, very well. And some of the comments that were left under that very, very much not so. But we'll get into all of that in a minute. As you'll know, in the members areas at the moment is my conversation with Callum Barker. Pardon me. Make sure you go and check that out. We should go and check that out. I had a great conversation with Callum about some of the stuff that's going on in Epping, the wider political scene. Really, really good conversation. And hopefully we'll have Callum back on the show sometime in the future as well, because there's so many other things we could have talked about as well. We're quite strapped for time in that conversation, but nonetheless, you're going to get a hell of a lot of good value out of that. Stay tuned for when that drops in the public very soon if you're not able to go on over to the members areas. If you did take advantage of some of the members promotions that I have done, then make sure you go and watch it now. That's literally what that promotion was for. That month, which you'll hopefully still have access to from some prior promotions, you'll be able to watch this now nice and early. You can go on over to Patreon or Locals, wherever it is right now, and watch it. And any feedback would be greatly appreciated. Again, straight into today. See, if you are able to, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you consider supporting the show either with buying me a coffee, my Rumble crypto wallet, all of those good things. Maybe taking out a membership to get all of the members' perks and access to exclusive contents. Very much so. Some good content coming up in the near future. So, big thing has happened. Nigel Farage and Reform have seemed to have finally, after being very, very dismissive at one point of Restore Britain, being saying that he had no concerns over them. He was asked were they a racist party. He said he didn't even know. Nothing ever occurred to him. Just being completely dismissive. Well, now, what seems to be a recent press conference or, announcement as to who's going to get what position if Reform were in government. I think they've said that Zaya Yousaf would be the shadow Home Secretary or whatever, despite nobody even electing him or voting for him or whatever. Right. The reformniks, if you will, have been out in force. I say this as somebody who seemed to have their opinion misconstrued in that last clip, which should really highlight how bad things are in Wales, at least in my opinion. That with the alternatives that we have, I would still have to say that at the moment, at least, Reform still seem to be the best option in Wales. How depressing is that to say? But we'll see what happens with Restore. There's 3 years to build going into the general election in 2029. There's not that much time to build anything between now and May. So we will see what happens. Wales specifically is a lot different to the national elections at the moment. So we will see how it goes. But definitely wishing them all the best. You'll see the clear differences between the two and why much more, I would argue, of what Rupert, Lowe and the rest of them are saying are going to resonate with more people over time than the paper-thin veneer that can be easily seen through if you have functioning eyes with Farage and ReformUK. So the first announcements came out. Steve Lowe's put this up on X, this short little clip, which we'll go over now. And it's a case where very, very telling. If you remember when there was the whole, for lack of a better term, hullabaloo going on with ReformUK and Zaya Youssef and Rupert Lowe, and there was all of the stuff around the lawfare and everything like that. We were told initially what precipitated Rupert Lowe's suspension from ReformUK were alleged threats against Zaya Youssef. Armed police turned up at his home late at night, confiscated his guns, even though he said he was going to turn them over voluntarily anyway. They launched this spurious legislative campaign, none of which held up to scrutiny. Everything was dropped on insufficient evidence. Lowe's guns were returned to him. Nothing ever happened. It was quite clearly a case of lawfare, which is very, very disconcerting when it's coming from your supposed based opposition, ladies and gentlemen, who seem to be acting more and more like the establishment, which they claim to be against by the day, from watering down their messages and even saying so much as, we were harsher than some of the other parties, but this is the way it's going to be, all because Rupert Lowe seemed to want to deliver on something that the British people want. The deportations. The deportations. Many people whom would say, just using terms like deportations and not something outright like remigration or whatever you want to use, right, is still too soft. But it's clear to see at the moment, at the very least, that Restore Britain's rhetoric on this subject is by far the strongest in any party that has a chance of being successful, it seems. At this present moment in time, anyway. Who knows what's going to happen over 3 years? Who knows? But at this present moment in time. Farage openly admitted that the reason Rupert Lowe was booted is because he thought he was being too extreme on deportations. And if you're going to talk about people who were born here, that's too extreme. Well, that means that Farage wouldn't do anything about Salman Abedi. That means Farage wouldn't do anything about Axel Rudakabana, about generations of gang rapists and their families and their communities. He would seemingly want them all to stay here. And that's actually seemed to be reform messaging at the moment when we look at Matt Goodwin's comments on, I believe it's trigonometry. But this is straight from Nigel Farage's mouth, ladies and gentlemen. Straight from the horse's mouth. Just have a listen to this and see if it resonates with you or how it makes you feel about what is supposedly our based opposition in the UK.
But you see, when he stood up and said that we've got to consider the mass deportation of entire communities, including those born in the United Kingdom, that just moves way beyond a point of reasonableness, of decency, of morality. And that was the moment at which, I realized we just had to get rid of him and get rid of him as quickly as we could. And I think in terms of the way we dealt with that, we were probably more brutal than the other parties. But you know what? That's the way it's going to be. Thank you. But you see,
just as easy as that. Just as easy as that, sounding completely indistinguishable from the others, maybe even more extreme to the left-wing direction than the others, more callous and cruel towards somebody who made the number one mistake that Robert Greene lays out in his book 48 Laws of Power, outshining the master, right? Because Rupert Lowe seemingly wanted to deliver on what reform was supposed to deliver, right? On what Farage was supposed to deliver, and is delivering currently on things that Farage said he would deliver but never did. That's why he had to go. Just let that sink in for a moment, ladies and gentlemen. A guy was booted from an opposition political party for espousing what the views of the opposition should have been, and for a while what they said they were going to be. And it's only now that Restore Britain exists, that Reform have been forced to up their rhetoric on these things. I believe Zaya Youssef before, from things that I had read and heard, said that in the Reform's first term, they had set the target for about 600,000 illegals alone. That wouldn't even obviously scratch the surface with regards to legal immigration, right? But that wouldn't even, as far as I'm aware, at least get rid of all of the illegals that are in the country currently, as far as I am aware at the very least. When Trump and the rest of them in America, the Trump regime at the moment in America, are showing that you can do millions a year if you wanted to. So, sounding more and more like the establishment every single day. And what was the point I made in that video where many, many people in my comment section were giving me all of these different things, saying I was a lefty plant, somebody that said that I was from Merthyr, and I've never been from Merthyr. Merthyr is a shithole even by definition from where I come from, okay? So don't be playing that shit. Don't be putting that smear on me, okay, saying I'm from Merthyr, right? That's like the dark sign in Dark Souls. I don't want that shit, right? It's a joke for anybody from Merthyr that's watching, okay? But all of our communities need to get our shit together. We're all shitholes around here where I come from, okay? A lot of it, anyway. A lot of it is just one essentially giant shithole, right? Because a lot of the industry has collapsed. The mines are closed. All the grievances around Maggie Thatcher, right? I get all that history, right? It's destroyed towns like mine. And they've yet to adapt. And you know, you have high streets that are nothing but foreign takeaways and foreign barbers and all of this stuff, right? It's not good. It's not good. But don't put that dark sign curse on me, man. And say that from birth, because that's not true. That made me laugh. Apparently, I'm a lefty plant because I wear my hood indoors sometimes, when obviously there's many, many recordings, right? Many, many recordings of this podcast. We're nearly at 100 now, even excluding the interviews, right? And the conversations that I've had where I don't have a hood up. Okay, sometimes it's stylistic choice, sometimes it's a bad hair day, sometimes just what I happen to be wearing at that time. Okay, sometimes because I'm either going to the gym or coming back from the gym and I kind of want to look like a hoodlum in the gym to not have people look at me, just so I can get my head down and do what I want to do. And do what I'm there to do. Okay? Anyway, tangent aside, we were told that it was because he had threatened Zaya Yousaf, sorry. And that, obviously, then you had the whole thing with Anderson and Rupert Lowe confiding in Anderson about the incident with his dog, right, where he opted to put down his dog via what we may see as unconventional means, but instead taking him to a vet and doing it that way. And then that was used at him. They insinuated that Lowe has dementia, right? All of these disgusting smears, right? Exactly what the establishment would do. And now Farage is openly saying that that's the way we're going to do it for anybody that gets in our way. He could not sound seemingly more like Keir Starmer if he tried. Right? Anybody that gets in the way, we're going to be harsh and brutal with you, and that's the way it's going to be. That is exactly the authoritarian line that people are sick and tired of. Not good. Not good considering there are supposed opposition, especially when it seems that they're saying this in defense of the communities that were responsible for the rape of Britain. Right? Which is at least what the sentiments that Matt Goodwin was echoing recently anyway, where he is obviously the Reform candidate for Gorton and Denton by-election. He has been saying that apparently the British don't want people connected to the Pakistani rape gangs rounded up, deported, all of this stuff, because of all things, their tolerance and just that they would seemingly be, for lack of a better term, un-British.
The British people think of themselves as very tolerant, very welcoming. They're not up for let's just round up everybody who knew anything about the rape gangs. Let's just round them up and put them in another country. The British people are rapidly changing to the point where they want a lot worse for those people. A lot of things now is revolving around not just mere deportations. We want examples made, certainly of the actual offenders themselves and the people that were aware of things that were going on, right? They can certainly be sent back to the countries that they're from, that their heritage is from, right? Because it's a choice. Indecision is a decision at the end of the day. By choosing not to come forward with that information of what they knew, either their family members or whatever it is people in their community were doing to these young girls, that is them choosing to put their crimes over the justice of those young girls. That is a crime against Britain and the British people. Certainly a disgusting crime against the girls and the victims and their families. What? We're just going to let them off the hook? We're just going to let them off the hook, can we? So you can appeal to them for votes. Is that what we're going to do? Just like you're putting a Muslim candidate forward in London, right? You're putting a Mohammedan candidate forward in London for that position when you want Ant Middleton chomping at the bit to represent you because you're trying to court their vote. So you guys were meant to be the whole party of the opposition of standing up for these victims. Nigel Farage saying he was going to pump his own inquiry, You know, he was going to pump the funds into his own inquiry and do it that way. Never materialized. Told people to actively ignore Rupert Lowe's inquiry that's going on at the moment. And now you're trying to actively court those voting blocks the same way that your supposed opposition, i.e. the establishment, has done. Remember when I said in that video, ladies and gentlemen, it's getting harder and harder and harder to tell these apart? An Animal Farm story. The creatures outside look from pig to man and man to pig and pig to man again, but already it was impossible to tell which was which. You're seeing that now, at least in my opinion. At least in my opinion. I'm saying as somebody that wants Reform UK to be every bit as based as the left makes them out to be. That's what I say this as. I do not say these things with joy. I do not say these things with, I want things to be this way. Because Reform has, at this moment in time, a lot of appeal that could be used extremely well, right, if they chose to, but they're choosing not to, right? And as a result, something has to be built up from the ground up again, right? Because this virus, right, political correctness virus has got into the foundations of Reform and rotted it again. Maybe because they were always containment to begin with, and some of us were slower to see it than others. Certainly me. Certainly me. But we've seen their outright establishment tendencies coming out with the smears against Rupert Lowe, with the false lawfare, right? If you need a reminder of what that looked like as well, ladies and gentlemen, here's some videos that Rupert Lowe put up on X recently, whereby this is an image of a police officer actually inside his house. Right, so you can see them here at the table, I believe, in Rupert Lowe's residence, presumably, you know, going through his firearms to confiscate them and stuff like that. This is the night before, mind you, that Rupert was going to voluntarily turn them over to the police himself. Right, he was going to voluntarily turn them over. Rupert Lowe's a farmer, if you didn't know. He owns a lot of firearms. So this is the video then of the police officers, I believe, then leaving his residence, I believe, but then there's another video coming up here of the police officers actually arriving. You can see the lights coming in the distance, and this is them turning up to his residence at 9:30 p.m. in the evening, right? The evening before that he was going to turn them over to his, turn them over to the police anyway. You can actually see it says 9:31, 32, 33 p.m. up in this top corner of Rupert Lowe's residence camera. And he says that I was not impressed that then armed police suddenly arrive on my doorstep late at night. Officers stayed until around 23:38. They confiscated my guns and left. It took so much time as I have a large collection. Yusuf's lies put my family through this ordeal, supported every way by the Reform leadership. Today, we find out it all happened because Farage didn't like my comment on mass deporting foreign rapists. The day he announces Yusuf as his potential Home Secretary to lead the police, if he did it to me, he'll do it to you too. Certainly seems that with Farage's gargantuan ego, certainly acting like some kind of character out of chapter 1 of Robert Greene's book, The 48 Laws of Power, right? I can't remember the historical figure he actually references at this time. I wish I could. It's a really, really good chapter in the book. Rule 1, never outshine the master, because Rupert Lowe was, you know, out positioning Farage in his own party, right? Many people were starting to then realize that maybe he would be a better candidate for leading it. Maybe then people were realizing that Farage has a terrible track record on these things. So by being a member for the European Parliament and whatever else, by seemingly being an instrumental voice in getting Brexit done, leaving it at the height of the party, Catherine Blakelock coming forward saying he sabotaged her party, him by his own admission allegedly saying that he was a pivotal force in scuppering the BNP. And now he's doing the same thing to Reform. Why would we not think that it's anything but containment? Right? Even as somebody that wants Reform to be good. This is the thing for people calling me a lefty plant and all of this stuff, and I get it, because not a lot of you ever would have seen the actual content and the commentary outside of that one clip, which I doubt many of you would have even stayed to the end to hear all of it anyway, and obviously you're not going to get my entire view from that. You're not going to get my entire view from that one clip anyway. I'm saying this is somebody that wants Reform to be anything but controlled opposition. Another branch of the establishment that's actually going to curtail genuine change by another 5 years, maybe even indefinitely, because God knows what the country's going to look like in another 5 years after that election, right? In nearly a decade. God knows what it's going to look like. You know? So this is really not good. You're wondering why Rupert Lowe seems to be getting more and more appeal by the day, despite Farage coming out and saying, you know, he won't even be on 1%, even in Great Yarmouth. Sorry, I don't believe all this stuff when he's saying this, all of this bluster, right? Rupert Lowe is doing something which, as far as I know, no other member of parliament does, which is give his salary for being an MP, I believe, every month to some kind of local business or charitable organization, whatever it is. Think if I just quickly try and find it, he put up a post not too long ago saying who he gave, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, who he was giving his salary this month to. And as far as I'm aware, no one else in Parliament does that. So I'm just going to pause it while I try and find it a minute, ladies and gentlemen. Literally right after I paused it, I found it. So this is one example, and Rupert Lowe, I believe, does this every month, at least as far as I'm aware. Said here, my MP salary donation this month is going to the First Belton Scouts group in my constituency. A building company went bust, leaving the group thousands and thousands down on a big project. The money will get the flooring sorted and hopefully more, a very worthy cause indeed. You're telling me doing things like this completely off your own back, nobody asks him to, as far as I'm aware. That's not going to generate public appeal. You can tell me that people even walking around his own constituency are not going to know who he is, what he represents, what he does for them. Are you being serious right now? So again, I think it's just all complete unfair discreditation because they are actually concerned there's actually going to be a genuine patriotic, for lack of a better term, alternative, not referencing the actual organization patriotic alternative, right? But a patriotic source of opposition with somebody with serious skin in the game. Serious skin in the game and a burning motivation from the fact that they stabbed him personally in the back and smeared him as all manner of disgusting things. Right, that I doubt he would ever forgive them for, and everybody would understand that. Right, you don't just insinuate that somebody has fucking dementia for no good reason, right, as a means to smear them politically, and think that when they get into the chambers in the Commons or whatever it is, that they all of a sudden be your friend. When you see, actually, that Keir Starmer will cross the floor to be all seemingly buddy-buddy with Farage, I think that should tell you a lot about what you need to know, ladies and gentlemen. I get it, it's an uncomfortable reality. Farage had us all hoodwinked in 2024. Some of us who, at the time of Brexit, would have been in college, right, who would have been probably around about 16, 17, not really understanding a lot of what was going on, right? And at the time, he was the next Hitler, we were told, right? At least that's what I remember. At least that's the way I remember people reacting. Anyway. Hopefully we can at least see through it this time. But we shall see. We shall see. And speaking of, again, somebody with seemingly more of a focus on Britain itself, right? You hear about that we cannot do these things for Britain, or the British people don't want to get rid of all of the communities that enabled the potential greatest war crime, right? And greatest crime against humanity that we have seen, at least in recent times, right? Reminiscent of the atrocities that occurred all throughout the Soviet pillaging of Germany in World War II, potentially even more, right? You've read the excerpts. You've read the things about the Jack Daniels bottles and the drugs and all of this other stuff, right? All of the torture, the way the police treated fathers and families. You've seen them. I know you have. They will then claim out of one side of their mouth, you know, to not want to do all that, to not want to deal with that, but then also claim that they want to put Britain first, not any other foreign nation or whatever it is. Seemingly, rather conveniently, maybe this is just a case of terrible optics, or even quote-unquote luxury communists at Navarra Media can get one over on you, conveniently seems to dissipate when it comes to one place in particular.
I want a national unifying politics which puts Britain first, not Pakistan, not Gaza, not any other foreign policy thing, Britain first.
Not Israel?
Well,
not Israel? The media's just been talking about Israel and the IDF for the last 4 or 5 days. That's what they talk about. You wouldn't think that high streets in this country are on the, are on the way down, or public services aren't doing well, or people are struggling with their bills. I hear so much about Israel.
Is that a fair point?
well, my personal view is Israel is a very close ally. Well, until recently, it was a very close ally of the United Kingdom. We should look after our allies. Unfortunately,
No, we shouldn't.
Unfortunately,
we should look after Britain.
Unfortunately, Israel no longer feels that we are a reliable ally,
cares?
thanks to the Labour government. I care. And
Why?
lots of British Jews, a lot of British Jews in the country.
I
care
don't.
about that.
The point of politicians in the UK should be.
Unfortunately, Israel, eh? Did you catch that reaction, ladies and gentlemen? Even if you're not on the same page with a lot of people on the nationalist side of politics, which I have a lot of questions about, it's a lot to learn about the history, right, of Britain and Israel and these nations, the relationship between us in Britain and areas around the world, right? You got to take into account a lot of people have grown up with a massively red-washed left-wing education system, whereby one side of the story has been told, other stories haven't been told by design. There's been so many lies by omission, and a lot of the things that we were told, we were potentially lied to about. It's a very hard thing sometimes to either unlearn these things or to know what to unlearn and what to learn, where the facts actually lie, right? So a lot of people then say they'll be really gung-ho one way or the other. A lot of people who are really now stuck in the middle, trying to make sense of this, trying to get to the truth, right, are having a really hard time. I speak that as somebody who is going through that at the moment. Pardon me. Very shocking to learn about King David Hotel bombing, Sergeant's affair, the other attacks from the other side as well. You got to account Britain, when it had the mandate, it wasn't just having attacks off Jewish groups, having attacks off the Arab groups as well. So that's why a lot of people like me are just saying, like, oh, well, right, we don't have the mandate anymore. We have nothing to do with it. You guys handle your own shit and don't ever, come knocking to us or whatever. You guys handle your own shit. Matt Goodwin's reaction, the minute when, again, horrible optics if you want to give him the biggest benefit of the doubt ever, right? Because he conveniently lists not Pakistan, not Gaza, not anywhere else. Aaron Bastani, again, I'll bring it up on screen for you, ladies and gentlemen. Aaron Bastani brings up Israel, and just watch his reaction again.
Politics, which puts Britain first. Not Pakistan, not Gaza, not any other foreign policy thing. Britain first.
Not Israel?
Well,
not Israel? The media's just been talking about Israel and the IDF for the last 4 or 5 days. That's what they talk about.
The easiest answer in the world was, yes, of course. That was the easiest answer in the world. Unless, of course, oh, hang on. Nigel Farage was hit with all these anti-Semitism allegations not too long ago. Right? All these things in the media that were maybe designed to smear him. Ultimately, they happened when he was 15 years old. Who gives a fuck? Who gives a shit? It was when he was a teenager. It's like where I talked about with Cal recently, Callum Barker, where he had that photo where he was staging himself to be the Unabomber with the wad of paper that was a prop with Unabomber manifesto just written on it. And a journalist from the Times actually tried to smear him and say that he was a neo-Nazi Unabomber sympathizer for a photo when he was about 15. Right? That was only like last year at the height of the Epping protests. Right? So hang on. When it comes to this other nation, all of a sudden you switch like that and it's be like, oh, when the easiest answer in the world was yes. But then you get hit with all these anti-Semitism allegations. You set up all these other like Reform Allies of Israel or whatever it is, or Reform Jewish Alliance and whatever, seeming to make these things go away when you had those lefty Jews at the event also that were hurling all this abuse, comparing you to Hitler, saying that you'd deport their grandmother back to Germany or whatever. And then when it's in the media, somebody asks you about Israel, you throw your hands up as if to be like, what am I supposed to say? The answer is yes, you put Britain first. You're a British, in this case, Gordon and Denton, by-election candidate, seemingly putting himself in a position to be an MP. So now a lot of us are going to be having concerns over maybe where your true allegiance lies, given that you could not seemingly answer a very, very basic question. Very, very basic question. On putting Britain first, somebody puts this other foreign nation, yes, also would not come first, and you can't seem to answer that question. Why is that, I wonder? These two clips now, ladies and gentlemen, are going to really sum up the differences between Reform, in my opinion, and Restore, and why my sympathies massively go towards Restore, even if, caveat being, in Wales at the moment, I don't see really... I would, if it was tomorrow and you had a choice, if there was no Restore candidate, right, then I'd put Reform on the ballot box, right? because I see them as like that should give you an idea on how bad things in Wales are. In fact, they are the best that we would have. At the very least, for Wales in particular, things maybe wouldn't get worse, and it would actually present a stepping stone towards better things. But this is the infamous clip from Richard Tice saying he doesn't really care about Britain in the future because, he'll be long gone. Did you know that apparently having your hood up indoors means that you're a lefty plant and maybe even a Fed? That's what some in the YouTube comment section seem to think. But regardless of that, if you're enjoying this conversation, then please ensure to like, share, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. Make sure you follow me on Rumble and all the other platforms as well. And if you want to see more conversations like this and other interesting ones that I've already had, then check this link somewhere up here for the link to the playlist on YouTube. Back to the show.
And he predicts that by 2063, Britain will be minority white British. Is that a concern of yours at all?
Yeah, I don't think that's I haven't seen those predictions, and 2063 is a long way off.
It's not that long. It's a few decades.
Yeah, it's a few decades. Well, it's I'm trying to do the maths quickly in my head, but it's in most people. I'll be long gone. Put it like that. I think that the UK is we are.
Doesn't care because he'll be long gone. That's what Richard Tice thinks about the demographic replacement of the UK. Speaking on behalf of Reform, it seems, right? This, in contrast, was from Rupert Lowe's announcement where he launched Restore Britain as a national political party. Have a listen to the difference.
I have chosen to speak to you today from the farm because places like this represent what proper Britain is about. Hard work, responsibility, effort, duty, stewardship. This is the England I know, and this is the England that I love. On a farm, you don't think in election cycles or headlines or polling. You think in seasons. You think in generations. In what you leave behind to those who come after you. And that's why, here on the farm, I am now launching Restore Britain as a national political party.
One is speaking purely in terms that are politically correct, that are exactly what the people, in most instances, are going to be sick and tired of, who doesn't give a shit about those who come after him, presumably his children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and what the country is going to look like long after he's gone. That is exactly, on the other hand, what Rupert Lowe is concerned with. Seemingly, if we're to take him at his word, which he has a hell of a lot more credibility in my eyes than any of the Reform leadership do. Any of them. I don't know. Are there any photos out there at the moment, which I know he's getting a lot of flack for his seemingly still relatively pro-Israel stance, right? And the remarks he was making when he actually had the Reform leadership and the Reform candidacy and had to obviously tout the party line, right? I don't know whether that's changed since then. Obviously, he had his allegations of anti-Semitism, quote unquote, for pointing out what seemed to be a hidden camera in a room and making a joke that we would have called that a Jewish camera. You know, there's plenty of photos out there, seemingly, or at least there's certainly a few out there of Tice going and wearing the little cap on the back of his head, seemingly kissing the wall, right? Seemingly with the Israeli government over his other shoulder, being like, yes, we got another one. But I'm not suicidal, by the way. And I haven't seen any of that with Rupert. Maybe there is. Who knows, right? His stance had changed. But you have one side of the political opposition that couldn't give a shit, seemingly, what Britain looks like outside of this election in 2029, which sort of parallels how they were in 2024. In the run-up to the election in 2024, the immigration election, super strong on Islam, all of this stuff, right? Key issues, pardon me, that people were concerned about. As soon as that election was done, that's when they seemed to taper off and massively nosedive into political correctness, right? Like, we've got our foothold, right? Let's start consolidating with the blob, right? Let's start moving ourselves into the blob so that we can keep the status quo going. Rupert Lowe seemed to be like, no, actually, don't want that. We were brought in to bring change, and that's why he had to be booted. And now he's saying that he's thinking, at the very least, in terms of the generations that come after him. It's clear night and day, in my opinion, who cares about Britain and the British people. Presumably, again, if we're taking them at their word. Again, to play devil's advocate, purely just to play devil's advocate, I don't believe this whatsoever. Maybe it's a case of, again, 200 IQ chess moves or whatever being played by Farage and Reform. I don't believe so. I don't believe so. And I don't believe you should either. In my opinion, there's one real source of opposition to destruction of the UK, and that is Rupert, Lowe and Restore. And they should be given every bit of support the British people can give them, at least as it presently stands. Now, on to some other things. So that's the whole thing about Reform and Restore, the drama that's been building at the moment. We'll see how it goes. I certainly think, as they say, pride comes before a fall. Nigel Farage and Reform seeming very prideful at the moment. I can only hope that what's the word I'm looking for? Saying is going to bear fruit. I only hope so. Certainly long before 2029, so that an actual source of opposition with true strength can be built. Now, this is quite interesting because this is propped back up in the media again. It's from the floor of the Senedd. And Plaid, it seems, were called out recently by Darren Millar, who is of the Tories, the Welsh Tories, on blocking an inquiry into child sex abuse. This is despite evidence of grooming gangs operating in Wales, some of which we'll review in this next section now. This was the clip in question that was shared by the guys at Doge Wales, which will form the basis of what we're going to be going over now.
Plaid, I'm afraid, voted against a Welsh Conservative motion calling for a grooming gang inquiry. You told me 12 months ago that there was no need for a grooming gang inquiry. There was no evidence of grooming gangs operating here in Wales. And that was in spite of the fact that Emily Vaughan had spoken publicly about her horrific experiences of abuse, and that the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse had found evidence of grooming gangs operating here in Wales, particularly around the Swansea area.
Yes, so they blocked it. Emily Vaughan, by the way, is a pseudonym. Emily Vaughan is a pseudonym for one of the victims of these gangs in Wales. I'm just going to share this note before we get onto it, because there have been motions, as far as I'm aware, Freedom of Information Act requests and everything like that, to have details about things of this nature in Wales that haven't been released for various reasons. But this is just a document which I found on the Welsh Government website as I was doing a bit of research just before I sat down to record this. Somebody did submit this. I can't remember it says on the document, 5th of March, on grooming gangs. Request to the Welsh Government for information under the Freedom of Information Act 2000, received on February 5th. You've requested the following: all correspondence between the First Minister and or Welsh Government with any or all of the 4 Welsh police forces on the subject of grooming gangs, all correspondence with between the First Minister and or Welsh Government with any or all of the 4 Welsh police and crime commissioners on the subject of grooming gangs, all correspondence between the First Minister and or Welsh Government and any of Wales's local authorities, Local Authority Social Services Departments, or WLGA, I'm not sure what that stands for, on the subject of grooming gangs, and all correspondence between the First Minister and or Welsh Government and any other stakeholders on the subject of grooming gangs. The Welsh Government responded, it does indeed hold information of this description. However, we have concluded that some of the information requested is exempt from disclosure under the following sections of the Freedom of Information Act. Personal information. So seemingly, when we go down to Annex 1, which you should be able to see on screen also, it seems as though they've rejected it on the personal data sections defined in sections 3, 2, and 3 of the Data Protection Act 1998, and means any information relating to identified or identifiable living individuals. An identifiable living individual is one who can be identified directly or indirectly, in particular by reference to an identifier such as a name, an identification number, location data, an online identifier, or to one or more factors specific to the physical, physiological, genetic, mental, economic, cultural, or social identity of the individual. under section 40-2, I guess you would call it, or brackets 2, of the Freedom of Information Act, personal data is exempt from release if disclosure would breach one of the data protection principles set out in Article 5 of GDPR. We consider the principle being most relevant in this instance as being the first, states that personal data must be processed lawfully, fairly, and in transparent manner in relation to the data subject. The lawful basis is that the most relevant in relation to the request of information under the FOIA is Article 6.1f, which states processing is necessary for the purposes of the legitimate interest pursued by the controller or by a third party, except where such interests are overridden in the interest of fundamental rights and freedoms of the data subject, which require protection of personal data, in particular where the data subject is a child. So seemingly, at the very least, and then you have things like legitimate interest tests, necessity tests, balancing tests, which I think that was the last one, which was really thing where it says whether the above interests override the interests, fundamental rights and freedoms of the data subject. Presumably, if this is in reference to the children victims, right? Obviously, we don't want to re-traumatize them or anything like that where possible, right? But the one thing you don't want to think about is if this legislation is being used to protect perpetrators. You know, because that's obviously then the government just being more complicit in these matters going forward, which obviously is going to just make people more and more angry. But as some examples, ladies and gentlemen, we covered this before, and there's quite a few examples, shockingly, from Wales. But you'd think Wales is a country still by ONS maps and so on, as being very much so dominated by what we would presume are native Welsh or native British people. And this problem is still going on. Right, that's why we have to take this seriously. We have not yet had the massive demographic problems that England has, right? And I'm tripping over my words a lot in this episode, trying to get it done because I need to go to the gym as soon as possible. We do not have the same level of demographic problems. Bear in mind, one element, the same demographic problem or the same demographic shift in England is going to have much less of an effect in England as it would in Wales, because the population, at least in terms of what it is between Wales and England before all of this, is about 1/10 the size in Wales, right? So it takes much less people to affect the same or more levels of change. But you have here, as one example, the real example that we covered a good while ago. This is from the North Wales Live. This is the 4 individuals that were arrested and I believe charged and convicted, I believe, but we'll see what the article says in a moment. I'm pretty sure that they were charged and convicted. It was a really, really stark example that we covered a few months ago. 4 men charged in connection with group child sexual exploitation probe. This is in Rhyl, by the way. Mustafa Iqbal, 42. And then we have Mohammed Usman Arshad, Zayula Badshah, and Jaswanda Singh, all in Rhyl, and they were arrested on and charged on various charges: 3 counts of rape, 3 counts of sexual assault, 3 counts of inciting a child under 16 to engage in sexual activity, 6 offences under Section 1 and Section 2 of the Modern Slavery Act, conspiracy to supply Class A and Class B drugs, possession of a firearm, and breach of a slavery trafficking risk order. That was Mr. Mustafa Iqbal, who appears, by having the most charges, appears to have been the ringleader, what we can assume. A lot of examples as well. You have seemingly a lot of either sort of like Central Asian, stereotypical, maybe like Pakistani or Afghani names, and then all of a sudden you have a Singh thrown in there as well, implying some kind of Hindi involvement, which again kind of casts a bit of doubt on the whole multiculturalism for certain communities and not others kind of thing. There's one 60-year-old man who was arrested as part of the investigation, had been released on bail pending further inquiries. The 4 men were remanded in custody after appearing before magistrates on Friday morning. They will appear at the court on September 5th. Maybe we can see if we can update this next time. So I haven't seen any updates with regards to this story. Police said Operation M-Bank and Operation Zirconia were linked investigations that have been led by the force. The investigations involved 3 teenage female victims who made reports in relation to a series of alleged offences in Rhyl and the surrounding area between April 2022 and March 2024. This has been a complex and long-running investigation. We have received direction from the Crown Prosecution Service to proceed with this case. Okay, sorry about that. Had to pause that a second, ladies and gentlemen. Just a slight interruption. A little bit of extra context for you. So I said I was going to put this maybe in an extra episode, but just as far as I'm aware at the moment, this is the updates I've been able to get on this case, the one from North Wales, the one from Rhyl. They pleaded not guilty. All 5 defendants, the 4 that were mentioned in that article, and also a 5th person by the name of Sarah Gray, was later charged with offences conspiracy to supply drugs, perverting the course of justice, assisting an offender. These defendants, on 5th of September at Mould Crown Court, pleaded not guilty. A pre-trial review took place on February 2nd. A full trial is scheduled to take place on 13th of April 2026. Apparently is expected to last around 4 to 6 weeks. So currently no convictions, and they have pled not guilty. So we shall see. But we have enough examples of it from up and down the country to see that, maybe there was this stuff going on. But we shall see. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. This is what I wanted to show you, however, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, where we need to be taking this seriously and why there is no community, regardless of demographic or whatever, with the amount of change that has occurred, not just in Wales, but in areas all up across Britain, every area of Britain, which is why you should be concerned about this, even if you don't think it's happening because, it's only happening in England, so you don't need to care. You really should, because we've seen that it doesn't take a lot of demographic change, seemingly, to produce these kinds of outcomes. This is the area of real in question, ladies and gentlemen, and I've set this, as you can see, to white as the ethnic component here, and you can see that by the last census, this could very much have changed since then. You have real north is about 94.2. You have real, let me see, I'll change it over here. Real southwest, 93. That's coming up okay on the screen. And then you also have real east, I believe, which is 97. So again, why we should be concerned about this, and there is evidence for this taking place, even in some of the quietest, coastal places right up in the north of Wales, and really giving you that nowhere is safe. And there was this article also that was published in Wales Online about 4 years ago. Evidence or inquiry finds disturbing evidence of organised networks of gangs abusing children here in Swansea, exactly as Darren Miller mentioned, exactly as he mentioned. So even Wales Online reporting on this a few years ago. Inquiry finds disturbing evidence of organised networks and gangs abusing children in Swansea. Inquiries found evidence of organised child sexual abuse and exploitation by criminal gangs and networks in Swansea, but accused police and other authorities of downplaying the scale of it over concerns about negative publicity. Swansea was one of the 6 case study areas looked up by the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, or ISCA, which found extensive failures in the way child sexual exploitation by criminal gangs was tackled. It spoke to victims in the case study area, some of whom reported being raped, abused, and in one case not in Swansea, forced to perform sex acts on a group of 23 men while held at gunpoint, concluded they were often blamed by authorities for the ordeals they suffered, while some were even slapped with criminal records for offences closely tied to their sexual exploitation. Report said there was a flawed assumption that child sexual exploitation was on the wane, with councils and police forces denying the scale of the problem despite evidence to the contrary. Concluded this might be down to a determination to assure they were not seen as another Rochdale or Rotherham, towns blighted by recent child sexual exploitation revelations, rather than a desire to root out and expose its scale. So saying that we don't have the problems here in Wales is an outright lie, and there have been victims that have gone on the record, as Darren Miller pointed out. So this is a victim who goes by the pseudonym Vaughan, pseudonym Emily Vaughan, to keep her anonymity. And then it says, according to the Senedd, which is a bit weird considering now they are strategically, it seems, or rather conveniently, silent on the inquiry that is going on, abuse gang inquiry should be considered, says Senedd, according to BBC. This is from February last year, just over a year ago. Senedd has unanimously called for a Wales inquiry into child sexual exploitation by gangs to be considered by the Welsh Government. Plaid Cymru and Labour rejected demands from the Tories for such an exercise to definitely take place, instead arguing for more police evidence to be reviewed first. It follows calls from a survivor for an investigation into the extent of the problem here in Wales. We have all got a moral duty to ensure those who commit these crimes face justice. The Welsh Government has previously said it has had assurances from all 4 police forces in Wales that there are currently no widespread issues with grooming gangs. Obviously, we know that that is not true. Some of the evidence that we have seen so far, they just seem to be conveniently withholding the information, as we've also seen. And what if we're going to not give them the benefit of the doubt will be, again, under the same statute of protecting victims, protecting anonymity, protecting identifiable things. But again, we've seen here that it seems to not be in the favour of the victims. It seems to be that they don't want the publicity of being seen as another Rotherham or another Rochdale. So this now in her 30s, Emily Vaughan said that she was first groomed at the age of 11 and then abused from the age of 14. She told BBC Wales in January she was trafficked to Telford, Blackpool and within Wales and was raped almost every single day. I'll just bring this article up on screen a moment, ladies and gentlemen, and just see if it comes up correctly. It's a bit weird. If you try and access these sites now with a VPN on, BBC Wales blocks you. Don't know if that's something that you've seen, ladies and gentlemen. So what you'll do is now, if you try to access some of these sites with a VPN, you'll see something that looks like this. Makes me wonder, just on a little side note, are they trying to censor this stuff from the rest of the world? If I'm not being, it's a bit weird because I'll turn my VPN off now and I guarantee you I'll be able to bring the webpage back up. Very, very odd to say the least. So let's just do a little test, shall we? Let's turn my VPN off. It was currently taking a holiday in Nashville. Oh, and would you look at that? Would you look at this, ladies and gentlemen? The article comes up absolutely no problem, just like it did before. Ooh, that doesn't look good, does it? That does not look good at all. So if we go back up here a moment, where is the, here it is. Is this the article? Don't know if this is the same article. Oh, here we go. This is the article I wanted to go to. There we go. This was nice. Not nice article. Grooming gang victim story downplayed in Senedd. So the woman, who goes by the pseudonym Emily Vaughan, accused the Senedd presiding officer Ellen Jones of downplaying her experience when it was shared in the Senedd earlier this week during a clash with Conservative group leader Darren Millar. Jones said she had been seeking to protect victims of abuse. The Welsh Government said there were no current widespread issues with grooming gangs in Wales. Ms Vaughan, who was now in her 30s, was groomed from the age of 11 and then abused from the age of 14. Trafficked to Telford, Blackpool, as we've just read. People think with sexual exploitation you're taken to a place and you're raped once. You're not. People think that sexual exploitation is just rape. It's not. You're being tortured. You're being bitten. You're being beaten. The issue of grooming gangs has been in the headlines, obviously tying it in with Elon Musk. Back in the calls, Ms Vaughan said perpetrators are so advanced, they're cleverer than the police, they're smarter than a lot of people think they are, and things are changing all the time. The public needs to be aware of it. The public need to be involved in it. Absolutely. Completely agree. So again, you think that Plaid are going to be, like big freedom fighters for Wales or whatever? You're based Welsh nationalists and all of these things? Come on, guys. Let's come off it. Let's stop the silly talk now, shall we? Obviously not going to happen. Plaid don't care that any of this is happening. They wouldn't care if it would continue in the name of their diversity and multicultural internationalist agendas. They're perfectly happy for more of this to happen, provided they get the votes to be able to completely destroy the freedoms and rights of the Welsh people. Come on, that's not in doubt at this point. That's not in doubt. Even Nation Cymru reiterating that the government pledges full cooperation with the grooming gangs inquiry in June of this year. And I haven't really seen it. I don't know whether it's just because maybe it hasn't been coming up on my feed or whatever. Maybe it's not coming up in my algorithm or whatever. I haven't seen any of them going really and saying anything about it. They've been stumm from what I've seen. Been absolutely stumm from what I've seen. And other things to point out as well, ladies and gentlemen, you have these organised cases we've been through. You also have then things taking place inside of certain religious institutions, as we would expect as well. This is from Cardiff, a Cardiff imam, in this article that was published in 2017, right? Was jailed for 13 years for abusing girls at Quran lessons. one of the mosques in Cardiff being one of the most radical in the entire of Britain, from what I am aware as well, of in many cases literally breeding ISIS fighters, people who want to go and fight for ISIS and stuff like that. Mohammed Haji Sadiq, 81, sexually assaulted young girls in front of class and slapped students who made mistakes. Even Pravda are having to report on this. By Pravda, I mean The Guardian. An imam who sexually touched 4 young girls during Quran lessons at a mosque has been jailed for 13 years. Mohammed Haji Sadiq would call pupils to sit next to him and read in Arabic from the Muslim holy book. He sexually touched the girls in front of his class and slapped students repeatedly. They made mistakes during lessons. Cardiff Crown Court heard that Sadiq of Kincoid, Cardiff, had metal and wooden sticks which he used to poke the children as they studied. He taught out of the Medina Mosque in Cardiff for more than 30 years, was convicted of the offences. Following a trial, a jury found him guilty of 14 offences, 6 indecent assaults and 8 sexual assaults that took place between 1996 and 2006. So historic incidents coming up also in Wales, going back, even before I was born, going back 20 to 30 years. And people still want to pretend that just because Wales has not had the demographic shift that England has, we don't have problems. You think this is just going to be contained to Cardiff, ladies and gentlemen? You think it's just going to be contained to Swansea? Just contained to Newport? No. That's where it starts. That's where it starts. It then goes out to everywhere as there are campaigns to quote-unquote diversify the countryside. And we really, really should be caring a lot more about that than we actually are, ladies and gentlemen. We really, really should. We have the opportunity to prevent a lot of these things from happening by demanding more, by demanding different initiatives, this word I was looking for, from our political establishment, not allowing them to run roughshod over our communities with these very damaging initiatives. Right? I would hope that you would consider supporting this show to help it function and to help it remain independent. If you would like to support this show, I'd be very, very grateful. There's a Buy Me a Coffee link down below. And if you happen to have any crypto to spare, my Rumble crypto tip jar is looking very, very sparse right now. Thank you ever so much to everybody for all of your support. So you can see, ladies and gentlemen, we've got serious problems. You can see that we've got serious problems in Wales. Like I said, they were saying that they were going to back an inquiry, all of this stuff. Who do you see sat across this mother who has very sadly lost her daughter, I believe after she was groomed into these, communities and had heinous things happen to her. And sadly, she ended up losing her life then. She was started up a foundation called the Samina Halliwell Foundation. This is Rachel Halliwell, who spoke at the rape gang inquiry. Notice again the distinct lack, seemingly as far as I have seen, of the support of this inquiry from Welsh and many other British politicians, and who you see sat opposite Rachel in this clip. That should tell you all you need to know.
I've had MPs who've come here and said you're always going to get a bad police officer, but we are concerned that it's a bit more institutionalised than that. Why do you think the police have reacted the way that they have in your daughter's case?
There's a number of what I think of lazy police work.
It's too difficult for them to...
Can't be bothered.
Yeah.
Because the officer did say to Samina, in front of me and my sister, if you go ahead with this, Samina, I'm going to have to fill in. He named the form and said, this is going to take me half an hour to 1 hour to fill in. And then I'm going to have to fill in this other form, named the form, and said, and that's going to take another 1.5 hours to do.
I've had MPs who've come here and said,
Yep. Rupert Lowe and his Rupert Lowe and his rape gang inquiry team sat opposite her, detailing the just disgusting laziness on the part of the police, which is consistent with all of the cases that we have seen. Either laziness and not caring about the plight of the families, not caring about the girls, or outright malice in allowing and aiding and abetting these disgusting degenerates to do whatever they wanted to these girls. She was 12 years old, by the way. Samina Halliwell. She was 12 years old when she took her own life. That's the kind of damage, that's the kind of damage that our politicians have allowed, facilitated, and encouraged in the name of multiculturalism, diversity, which has been a cover for a slow genocide of the British people. Never ever forget that. Never ever forget that, and remember that that's what it is every single time one of these instances pops up, whether it's organized or whether it's an individual, whether it takes place in the middle of a street or inside a religious institution. That's what this has been. It's been the result, the observable result of one of the most treasonous acts that has ever been seen in British history. And finally, speaking of that, quite interesting, I can't believe that this is allegedly where we are, according to some who've been reporting on this, that apparently it seems as in anticipation for the bread lines that are incoming, right, in the UK, in the communist state of the UK, that Labour now, very, very funny, Labour now have been allegedly breaching some kind of law of bribing voters with food. That's where we are now, allegedly. So according to the Telegraph, the headline is, "If you want to get fed, please stand. Police investigate claims that Labour bribed voters, quite literally, with food." Again, if we're reading this less charitably, we may read "If you want to get fed, please stand," as "if you don't, we'll starve you to death." That's the less charitable interpretation of this. But this is the article from the Telegraph. Police are investigating a Labour Party campaign event where voters were told to hold up posters if you want to get fed. This is just great, isn't it? The party faces allegations of attempting to bribe voters at a dinner organised with members of the South Asian community as part of Labour's campaign to win the Gorton and Denton by-election. Greater Manchester Police confirmed it is investigating this event for alleged treating the electoral offence of bribing voters with food, drinks or other benefits in exchange for votes. The dinner was held at a restaurant and wedding venue in Manchester on Wednesday and hosted around 600 people, including Lucy Powell, Labour's deputy leader, and Lord Khan, just as British as you and me, of Burnley. Attendees were asked to support Angeliki Stogia, she sounds British as well, Labour's candidate in the Gorton and Denton by-election, and were given a free meal. Labour sources claimed the event was not in breach of electoral law because the rules against treating allow ordinary hospitality. However, a video released on Monday appeared to show attendees being asked to support Ms. Stogia in exchange for their food. An organiser who appeared to be setting up a photograph could be heard telling voters that this needs to be a sea of red Angeliki posters in this hall. Friends, there are still some people sat down, not holding the flyers up. This is really important. If you want to get fed, I've been told you have to hold one of these up. The Gorton and Denton by-election is a three-way race between Labour, the Green Party and ReformUK. Follows the resignation of Andrew Gwynn, the former Labour MP, last month. So that's where we are now, apparently. That's where we are. Yes, it was at a social event. Yes, it was in this context of a by-election in this constituency that many, myself included, hadn't even heard of until recently. Right. But quite literally now saying, look, if you want to get fed, I've been told you have to hold one of these up, a poster or whatever it is of the Labour candidate. How long do we reckon, like we're talking about the euthanasia bill and stuff like that at the moment, how long do we think it's going to be before you can end your own life till the government says that you have to? You know? How long before this is going to be the case of, you know, it's a national leader, not just a by-election candidate. And if you want to get fed, well, you best turn out and vote the right way on election day, right? So that democracy can be a thing long of the past, but we can still give the impression to the rest of the world and all the other world leaders that we're a free and liberal democracy because we win elections that we know are rigged completely in our favour. Because if you don't vote for us, then we'll quite literally starve you and your entire family, the next 3 generations of you, to death. I will not give the benefit of the doubt and say that our government would not do that. I think that would be easily on the agenda sheet if it meant that they were able to accomplish their objectives of completely taking over the UK, of making it a one-party state forever, of exercising total control and power for power's sake. And maybe this is just the start of it. We can laugh at this now. What happens when this is the norm? Happens then in China, where you make a counter-revolutionary social media post on state-approved media, and the next thing you know, you can't get bread, and your residence been put up, for somebody else, and you've just been made homeless at the flick of a switch. All right? This is where we're on track to. And I think we need to be taking this a lot more seriously than we are. It's easy to laugh. Oh, ha, ha, ha. They were at this event and they said that they had to hold up these stupid posters to get, this meal and whatever. But how long before that's the norm and we end up looking like North Korea? So I certainly, it's my opinion, with the best shot of an actual opposition getting in, hopefully in the next 3 years, that Britain certainly needs to be restored. And I'll do it for today. Thank you very much for watching and listening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it useful. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are. Thank you for watching. Hot advice. See you next time. And you take very good care of yourselves now. Godspeed. Oh, shit. I messed up my transition. We'll do that again. I might keep this in. Who knows? See you later, guys. Have a good one.
The island of Britain in 2026 is a very scary place. In the bowels of the Big Brother state apparatus, cogs churn for hours a day, turning treasonous power fantasies of panopticon surveillance and the criminalization of the wrong thoughts into a terrifying daily existence for its native populations, many of whom are unaware of the prison being built around them, and even worse, are conditioned to accept their imprisonment and extinction as good and necessary. It doesn't have to be this way. The weak and the evil that created the hard times for their own personal gains of power and wealth have, in these pursuits, brought out a fire in the hearts of men that hasn't been seen in generations. A fire that burns in the hearts of men like my guest today.
Liberate England!